and he always kept one hand or the other close to his abdomen. He was like, and yet unlike, the Secretary of State. Both had the look of hunted animals. But where Palm was a rabbit, twitching to take flight at the first whiff of danger, Hutchinson was a cat who hears hounds baying, ready to run if he could, or claw if he must. "Good day, Mr. Silk," he said, shaking hands with me after the introductions. "I see you're healed. You're smart. You wouldn't be here today if poor Silas Cumshaw'd been as smart as you are. Great man, though, a wise and a far-seeing statesman. He and I were real friends." "You know who Mr. Silk brought with him as a bodyguard?" Palm asked. "Hoddy Ringo." "Oh, my God! I thought this planet was rid of him." The President turned to me. "You got a good trigger man, though, Mr. Ambassador. Good man to watch your back for you. But a lot of folks here won't thank you for bringing him back to New Texas." He looked at his watch. "We have time for a little drink before we go outside, Mr. Silk," he said. "Care to join me?" I assented, and he got a bottle of super bourbon out of his desk, with 4 glasses. Palm got some water tumblers and brought the pitcher of ice water from the cooler. I noticed that the New Texas Secretary of State filled his 3-ounce liquor glass to the top and gulped it down at once. He might act as though he were descended from a long line of maiden aunts, but he took his liquor in blasts that would have floored a spaceport labor boss. We had another drink, a little slower, and chatted for a while, and then Hutchinson said regretfully that we'd have to go outside and meet the folks. Outside, our guards, Hoddy, the 2 Marines, the Rangers who had escorted us from Palm's office, and Hutchinson's retinue, surrounded us, and we made our way down the plaza through the crowd. The din, ear-piercing yells, whistles, cowbells, pistol shots, the cacophony of the 2 dance bands, and the chorus singing, of which I caught only the words, "The skies of freedom are above you," was as bad as New Year's Eve in Manhattan or Nairobi or New Moscow on Terra. "Don't take all this as a personal tribute, Mr. Silk," Hutchinson screamed into my ear. "On this planet, to paraphrase Nietzsche, a good barbecue halloweth any cause." That surprised me at the moment. Later, I found out that John Hutchinson was one of the leading scholars on New Texas, and had once been president of one of their universities. New Texas Christian, I believe. As we got up onto the platform, close enough to the barbecue pits to feel the heat from them, somebody let off what sounded like a 50mm anti-tank gun 5 or 6 times. Hutchinson grabbed a microphone and bellowed into it, "Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please." The noise began to diminish, slowly, until I could hear one voice in the crowd below. "Shut up, you damn fools! We can't eat till this is over." Hutchinson introduced me in a very few words. I gathered that lengthy speeches at barbecues were not popular on New Texas. "Ladies and gentlemen," I yelled into the microphone, "appreciative as I am of this honor, there is one here who is more deserving of your notice than I, one to whom I also pay homage. He's over there on the fire, and I want a slice of him as soon as possible." That got a big ovation. There was, beside the water pitcher, a bottle of super bourbon. I ostentatiously threw the water out of the glass, poured a big shot of the corrosive stuff, and downed it. "For God's sake, let's eat," I finished. Then I turned to Thrombley, who was looking like a priest who had just seen the bishop spit in the holy water font. "Stick close to me," I whispered. "Cue me in on the local notables, and the other members of the diplomatic corps." Then we all got down off the platform, and a band climbed up and began playing one of those raucous cowboy ballads which had originated in Manhattan about the middle of the 20th century. "The sandwiches'll be here in a moment, Mr. Ambassador," Hutchinson screamed, in effect whispered, in my ear. "Don't feel any reluctance about shaking hands with a sandwich in your other hand. That's standard practice here. You struck just the right note up there.
That business with the liquor was positively inspired."
The sandwiches, huge masses of meat and hot relish, wrapped in tortillas of some sort, arrived, and I bit into one. I'd been eating Super Cow all my life, frozen or electron beamed for transportation, and now I was discovering that I had never really eaten Super Cow before. I finished the first sandwich in surprisingly short order, and was starting on my second when the crowd began coming. First, the diplomatic corps, the usual collection of weirdies, human and otherwise. There was the ambassador from Tara, in a suit of what his planet produced as a substitute for Irish homespuns. His embassy, if it was like the others I had seen elsewhere, would be an outsized cottage with whitewashed walls and a thatched roof, with a bowl of milk outside the door for the little people. The ambassador from Alpheratz II, the South African nationalist planet, with a full beard and an old-fashioned plug hat and tailcoat. They were a frustrated lot. They had gone into space to practice apartheid, and had settled on a planet where there was no other intelligent race to be superior to. The Mormon ambassador from Deseret, Delta Camelopardulus 5, the ambassador from Spica 7, a short, jolly-looking little fellow with a head like a seal's, long arms, short legs, and a tail like a kangaroo's. The ambassador from Beta Cephas 6, who could have passed for a human if he hadn't had blood with a copper base instead of iron. His skin was a dark green, and his hair was a bright blue. I was beginning to correct my first impression that Thrombley was a complete dithering fool. He stood at my left elbow, whispering the names and governments and home planets of the ambassadors as they came up, handing me little slips of paper on which he had written phonetically correct renditions of the greetings I would give them in their own language. I was still twittering a reply to the greeting of Nana Debadian from Beta Cephas 6 when he whispered to me, "Here it comes, sir, the Zisroff." The Zisroff were reasonably close to human stature and appearance, allowing for the fact that their ancestry had been canine instead of simian. They had, of course, longer and narrower jaws than we have, and definitely carnivorous teeth. There were stories floating around that they enjoyed barbecued Terran even better than they did Super Cow and hot relish. This one advanced, extending his three-fingered hand.
"I am most happy to make connection with Solar League representative," he said. "I am named Gulafur Dispatin Vuvuvu."
No wonder Thrombley let him introduce himself. I answered in the basic English that was all he'd admit to understanding. "The name of your great nation has gone before you to me. The stories we tell to our young of you are at the top of our books. I have hope to make great pleasure in you and me to be friends." Gugulafur Vuvuvu's smile wavered a little at the oblique reference to the couple of trouncings our space navy had administered to Zisroff ships in the past.
"We will be in the same place again times with no number," the alien replied. "I have hope for you that time you are in this place will be long, and will put pleasure in your heart."
Then the pressure of the line behind him pushed him on. Cabinet members, senators and representatives, prominent citizens, mostly Judge so-and-so or Colonel this and that. It was all a blur, so much so that it was an instant before I recognized the gleaming golden hair and the statuesque figure.
"Thank you. I have met the ambassador."
The lovely voice was shaking with restrained anger. "Gale!" I exclaimed.
"Your father coming to the barbecue, Gale?"
President Hutchinson was asking.
"He ought to be here any minute. He sent me on ahead from the hotel. He wants to meet the ambassador. That's why I joined the line."
"Well, I suppose I leave Mr. Silk in your hands for a while," Hutchinson said. "I ought to circulate around a little."
"Yes, just leave him in my hands," she said vindictively.
"What's wrong, Gale?" I wanted to know. "I know I was supposed to meet you at the spaceport, but—"
"You made a beautiful fool of me at the spaceport."
"Look, I can explain everything. My embassy staff insisted on hurrying me off.